Take a look at this map comparing Mongolia's massive landmass to other major countries. It is the 18th largest nation on Earth, yet the data scales down to this microscopic 0.03% dot. This is Ulaanbaatar, and it holds the country's entire population. Step outside this tiny circle, and your chances of survival plummet. 99.7% of Mongolia is entirely empty. The ground itself rejects life. The landscape is dominated by thick layers of frozen permafrost, and the earth that manages to break through is heavily saline and choked with rocky sediments. It is land that refuses to be farmed. Then you factor in the brutal climate. Blistering Siberian winds routinely rip across the northern and western poles, dragging the atmospheric temperature down to a lethal -50 degrees Celsius. On a purely geographical level, almost the entirety of Mongolia is incompatible with permanent human settlement. Yet, in the middle of this freeze sits the singular exception, the Valley of Ulaanbaatar. The Khangai, Khenti, and Kuvskul mountains form a triangular wall, deflecting Siberian winds and raising temperatures to -2.9 degrees. These mountains also trap moisture, creating orographic rainfall that washes mineral-rich soil directly into the valley below, creating arable land. While geography explains why this valley is habitable, it doesn't account for why the Mongolian population has remained so small for so long. Even with a viable oasis, the census numbers suggest a series of events that consistently prevented this population from ever gaining momentum. That stagnation began in 1687. The Qing dynasty held deep resentment against the descendants of Genghis Khan, stemming from centuries of past conquests. Seeking to settle this historic score, the Qing launched a war of revenge against the ruling Dzungar dynasty. They marched into the territory with the intent of dismantling the Mongolian presence. The scale of the resulting genocide was absolute. Out of a total population of 1 million people, the Qing wiped out 800,000 in a single sweep. 80% of the nation vanished. This single event created a population void that would take centuries to begin filling. In the wake of that devastation, the survivors sought peace. They began adopting Buddhism on a massive scale. But that shift created a new demographic constraint. By the early 20th century, 1 out of every 3 Mongolian men had become a celibate monk. The national birth rate flatlined. This vulnerability attracted the Soviet Union in 1921. The USSR helped expel the remnants of the Qing dynasty, but they arrived with their own agenda. They needed a massive pipeline of human resources to fuel their industrial revolution. To manufacture that labor force, the Soviets installed aggressive pro-natalist policies, taxing childless citizens while rewarding mothers with cash and maternal glory medals. The USSR operated this state-sponsored breeding program with a clear objective. They required millions of bodies to staff their factories, and they viewed the Mongolian population as a primary source of cheap labor. This labor quota immediately collided with Mongolian culture. The massive population of celibate Buddhist monks was an obstacle to the Soviet birth rate targets. Under the leadership of Joseph Stalin, the Soviets decided that if religious tradition was halting population growth, that tradition had to be eliminated. Between 1921 and 1939, thousands of monks were systematically executed, and over 1,000 monasteries and temples were burned to the ground. The very religion Mongolians adopted to find peace after one genocide eventually made them the primary target of a second, politically motivated purge. Direct foreign control only ended in 1991. The collapse of the USSR finally allowed Mongolia to govern itself freely. But the scars of historical trauma and extreme geography had already locked their demographics in place. They never had the opportunity to multiply and expand. Even today, the record of that Soviet influence remains visible, carved into the hills overlooking the capital. This emptiness is a physical manifestation of the biological and political forces that have shaped this land. That tiny 0.03% of inhabited land represents a resilient population. They clung to their single geographic safe haven, surviving imperial genocide, religious shifts, and foreign social engineering just to exist in the present day.